My talk is about leading in turbulent times, and before of all, I'd like to, if you have any questions, just ask them right now. So I don't want to wait till the questions answer part. I guess we can try to combine your questions into my talk. I'm talking about leading in turbulent times. And turbulent times, this is something that can happen outside of us and also inside of us. And going through turbulent times always means you have to overcome your fear and you have to deal with your worries. And as a leader, you not only have to overcome your fear, you also have to get creative. And to get creative, you need to be bored. That's the message, right? And I will show you how to get there. And if you have overcome your fears and you are creative, that's the moment where you can do real strategic and normative decisions. And that's all about in that talk. So first of all, I asked ChatGPT, what are the challenges of our times? This is the answer of ChatGPT. It told me that this is only valid till 2022. It doesn't know the last 2 years, but I guess we are more or less, and we understand that point of view. There are a lot of global challenges that we have to be aware of. And more or less, maybe 1 or 2 or 3 of these global challenges might affect you personally. So, actually, the global pandemic for me as an individual was really easy to handle, but for me, climate change really, really fears me. Because I live directly at the sea, and I'm not sure if my houseboat will be there in 10 or 20 years because of the oceans arising. So, rough times, we have to handle with rough times. And also, there's the question, what's about me? And we all, as individuals, have to deal with personal challenges. We have to clarify for ourselves what is our purpose. We have to go through our health issues. We all, I guess, more or less thrive for satisfaction. We have to deal with our family and friends and our personal development. And there might be also parts in it that fear us. So here I am as a leader with my perspective on the world, my stories, my experience, and my gaze into the future. And this is what this sentence can be said by every leader. When you are leading, you as a person are in that room, and your perspective and your story is in that room also. But as a leader, it's your job to ensure the business of tomorrow. And actually, it's not easy for us to look into a bright future when we are in fear. So, as a leader, I ensure the business of tomorrow, and I bring out in myself, my perspective, my experience, my optimism and confidence, but also my fears and my worries. Here I am. And I'd like to differ between fears and worries because that's very important. When we are feeling fear, we try to fight or flight or to freeze. And when we are in fear, we won't think, we just react on the fear. When I am in worry, I can develop a realistic perspective. I have the ability to think about the situation. I can handle the risks and the opportunities, and I can build my own image of the future. So, and there's one saying that helps also to differ between fear and worries. It says, when you need courage for something, then there is fear in that game. Because you only need courage when you're feared. So have a look at the year 2024. And my question is, oh no, before I have my question is, Thomas Lohner in 2 hours will say to 24, innovate or die. So that's a huge sentence, a huge question, a huge sentence. And my question is, when you hear that, does the thought of tomorrow trigger your fear, or triggers it just worries in you? Do you need courage to go there, or are you simply looking forward for what's coming? So that's the question as a leader. When you are just looking forward for what's coming, you can skip the next chapter of that talk, and then you go into it for the third part. For the ones who are feeling some kind of worries or fear in themselves, therefore is the next chapter. And that's not easy, so I asked you just, do you fear? And it seems to be a simple question, but the way how we work as humans is more or less complicated, because our subconsciousness tries to hide fear from us, because we don't feel well when we are feared. So most of the times, people that are in fear can't explain they are in fear. And when we are in fear, we go into that fight, flight, or attack mode, and we are not able of thinking and acting well. So, as a leader, you need to overcome your fear. And there's one way, one very simple, easy way to overcome your fear. It's saying, hello, here I am, hello my fear. Because when we're talking about our fears, they will diminish, they will go away. We have to speak them out loud. That's the whole solution for overcoming fears, just to talk about them. But we are not used in a business context to talk really about our fears. So I have some ideas for them, and for me it's very important to overcome that fear, because you only get creative when you are fearless. So, and the next thing is you need to be bored to get creative. But first of all, we need to lose our fear. And when you lost your fear, you can get creative, and therefore you just need to be in the moment. You need to take a break. No interruptions, no smartphone, just you. And then you can think about the current state. You can think about the future. You can make conscious decisions, and then you can go into a learning cycle. So that's the way. Lose your fear, be creative, and try to learn. So, but how do you overcome your fear? One more description about fear and worries. Fear is always in the moment. It's overwhelming. And normally we fear something undirected. We don't know actually what we really fear. It's more or less a whole feeling which is very strong, but we can't explain it very well. And a lot of people just feel fear in their body. So when I'm feared, I feel it in my stomach. I know that for a lot of persons it's like that. Some people have problems in their neck, and that's just the fear. So there are fear always finds a place in your body. And when we fear something, it's existential. And when we are worrying something, it's directed, it's manageable, and it leads to action. So it's easier to worry something than to fear something. And if you sense direct resistance to the next examples, then try to develop another alternative for you, because when we have fear in us, the fear tells us we don't want to go there, and it tells us that doesn't make sense. So that could be an answer to your fear if you feel something like, oh, I don't want to do that. But I really invite you to find a way to express your fears. And I have some examples for you, and all the examples I have are all about fears in business context, because it doesn't make sense to express all your fears at the same time. That would be overwhelming, and as a leader, your business perspective is that be in priority. So it's nothing more and nothing less. It's only about fears in business context. And one method I brought with me is a group example. So imagine you have a group before you, and then you just do a time loop and you say, imagine we have 1 year later, we are at the 7th January of 2025, and everything you did in business went wrong. Maybe you are bankrupt, maybe you lost everything, maybe you had to reduce your employees. Whatever it happens, it's really, really worse. And now that you're in that mood and in that feeling, take a look back and ask yourself, what went wrong? What did we do and what didn't we do? And if you are talking about that, that might open the rooms for your fears. Actually, that it looks like a very hard example and exercise, but sometimes it brings out a lot of options with a lot of humor. And that humor might lead to talking about your fears. So I really invite you to make a time loop and to look back what happened. The other example is maybe just schedule your fear, and you have a look into your calendar and you ask yourself what's happening in 1 month, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 1 year. And you ask yourself, what is the worst that could happen? And that's the same with this, as the first exercise. It helps you to explain and to express your fears. And then you could also do some kind of listing and scaling. You just make a list of normative and strategic things you should do. And then you just scale from 1 to 10, which needs the most courage, because you remember when courage is needed, there is fear. And afterwards you can discuss with the partner what exactly you need this courage for. And therefore, then you have an idea what you are fearing and you can deal with it. And maybe the fear turns out into a worry because you could describe it more concrete what is fearing you. So all of those examples are that way: find someone, try a method, inspect and adapt, and try a way to express your own fears dealing with your business. Then it's about, as a leader in turbulent times, it's about getting creative. And if we are feared, we are not able to be creative. So we assume now we are not feared anymore. We are still worried, but we are not feared. And then is the question how we get creative. And that's really easy if our thoughts have the chance to fly and to flow, then we are able to think new and creatively. And as an example, I would refer to Newton, who just took a nap under a tree, and then the apple fell down. He really was in leisure and freedom, and he was in peace. And he looked at that apple, and that was the moment he understood what gravity means. So creativity is based on being in leisure, and it's not about being stressed. And you know that because a lot of people talk about business ideas, starting with that sentence, I had the idea while showering, in my world, while knitting. I love knitting. Some people do it while jogging or in the gym, and that's kind of being bored because you haven't a smartphone with you. You don't. Most of the people don't listen to music in that moment. They are just showering or jogging, and then the ideas flow. So that's the boredom we are looking for. And creative boredom, we can't time box it. It's not like we do something in our calendar and say from 8 to 10 we are creative right now and we are now bored and we are able to think something new. And it succeeds only when we don't have any interruptions, and it only happens when we are out without fear. And each of us has his or her way to a creative boredom, which is a kind of mindfulness. And as in the examples before, I just gave you some examples, and if these are not your ones, it's the question, what are your ones? How do you get into that creative boredom? One simple thing is just have a walk. Just have a walk through a forest or a park. So where you don't read such much, where you just have nature around you. Leave your smartphone at home or put it at least into the flight mode and just walk and feel, be in that moment. Just feel it. And then your thoughts will start to flow, and you will see things you never saw before, because you just walk, you are in that moment, and your thoughts are coming. That's the idea of creative boredom. So another way is, that might be helpful for those who are living in such huge city as Bangkok, where the forest, where aren't so much forests, is just walk through a city and try to see that city with the eyes of a child. So stay in silence, just walk through the streets, and you just ask yourself, what do I see? What do I hear? What do I observe? What's happening here? And just have a look of it. with a nice, more or less naive way of seeing the world. And that's impressing what we can see when we don't rush through the streets. Just walk with mindfulness through the streets. You could also combine this exercise with someone else. Then you would go for a walk in silence with someone else for also 15 minutes. And then you go back the same way and you show the other one what you observed. So you show your observings and you share your experience. And there are great things you can discover on this very mindful walkings through the streets. So when we did that, we overcame our fear. We have the ability to think creatively. And now the question is, we are leading, for what we are leading more or less for a strategic and normative way or level. And we have also an operative way of decisions and things we have to do in a company. So this is the questions, do we do the things right? But the more important question is, and that leads to Thomas' talk, is do we do the right things? And if I have to sum up till now, it's here I am a leader, I'm in confidence, with optimism, perhaps with worries, but without fear. I'm thinking creatively with an open mind, open to work on the system, on normative and strategic levels. So, and therefore I need some learning cycles. I need to establish some kind of what did I want to do, what happened, what do I learn from that? And because I'm looking at the business of tomorrow, does it, whatever we do right now, does it lead to the business of tomorrow? And the last question is, as a leader, what can I do that my teams reaches peak performance? So how can I give them trust so that they are reaching peak performance? In that moment, the pitfall of micromanagement waits for us because it's easier to do often it's easier to do the operative things, and because they are clear, they are straightforward, we know what to do, and strategic and normative questions and decisions are more unsure. Maybe they bring fear with us, with them, and we want not to feel that fear, so it's easier to do micromanagement. But that's not your job. Your job is to look onto the strategic and normative questions. So therefore, you have to leave out that operational trap. And it's not easy sometimes to see that you are in that trap because you get hormones, lack hormones for being on that operational part. So it's a real pitfall. So you have to set the sails right so that you can maintain and innovate. And leadership for teams is always replaces the missing self-leadership of the people. So what you have to do is to ask yourself, are my people in that mood and the ability to overcome to their fears? Are they able to get into a creative mode? Do they act with, do they answer the right questions on the normative and strategic level? And what you see before you, it's more or less a mirror of yourself. So you bring in your fears, your worries, your optimism, your confidence. And when you are leading your people, they also have all those feelings in themselves. So it's your responsibility as a leader to act with that. So you have to turn fear into worries. First of you at yourself, then with the others. You have to ensure that the people you lead can also work fearlessly and creatively, and you have to ensure that all the people work on the right level. So take care for yourself, maybe by walking around and seeing the world as a child. Then take care of the others. And one of the most important things as a leader is you only can take care of the others if you took care of yourself. Because otherwise, you would try to heal something on the other side which is still burning in you, and that doesn't work. So, as my last sentence and as a resume, take care of yourself, then take care of others, overcome your fear, get creative, and then work on normative and strategic tasks and learning cycles. And if you are doing this, then you are capable of leading in turbulent times. Good luck. Any questions?
Thank you. So I guess after listening to this talk, for everyone here in the room, it should be totally clear what we have to do if we find ourselves in troubling times, in theory. So you also said that being afraid or being worried sort of holds us back. So what if after this talk I know what to do, but somehow I cannot find the courage to do the first step and to really do it? How would I cope with that?
The most important thing is talking about that. So Kate just mentioned management networks, and this is what I always would do. I would ask someone who is a partner of me or someone on the same level, and I just have to talk about that. If we talk about our fears, they are getting smaller, smaller, and smaller till they become worries, and we are able to deal with worries. Yes, you need to take the microphone.
We just had the fun at lunchtime to talk about fear. It just came into my mind. What about the fears of things you can't influence? You, in the first slide, showed what ChatGPT was saying. If we talk about fears in business, yes, I understand that can be overcome. But what about those things like climate change, wars and stuff, where I just feel like I've been being played. I have no influence to change that, whatever I do.
Also talking about that is setting the status that helps the state. So, and when I'm saying it's fear me how the climate is changing, and I see this in my hometown, then I'm doing it more concretely. And then when I doing it more concretely, I have more or less a chance to change something in that small area. And if I do that, that's the way how I can handle those fears. And so they become worries. So the answer is always talking about that. And that's very, very helpful. And often we have the feeling of we can't show our fears. So especially in business context, it's very unusual to talk about the fears. And when I'm dealing with CEOs, my first question is, how do you feel? And normally they answer me what they did the last week. And I said, okay, that was not the question. How do you feel? And if it's a personal coaching, it would also lead to the question, how do you feel personally? If it's a business coaching, it leads to the question, how do you feel about your company? How do you feel about the future? How do you feel? And that's unusual to talk about them, but our feelings, the bad feelings often hold us back, and it really helps to talk about them because then they lose their power. That's the question over here.
I have a question because I think addressing your fears is somewhat of an intrinsic motivation. You as a leader, or everyone as a leader, has this goal. They want to overcome their fears. Mm-hmm. But how would I approach it when I want to help the members of my team or the members of my company overcome their fears and address them, even though maybe that's not on their agenda? It's more of a trying to make people grow and trying to take fears of other people, but is there a way to bring this into the discussion even when it's not on an individual's agenda, or do you believe that addressing fears can only come from a personal intrinsic goal from every individual person?
Actually, it needs to be. It needs to lie on the table. So I have two answers to you. The first of it is people are answering in self-revelation. When I say as a leader, I'm feared of, I open a room. We are able in that room to talk about fears, so someone could answer. And the other answer would be try a method where you don't ask directly about the fears. So I have I often use one method which is called telling in colors, and therefore we have a big picture with a huge amount of different areas in different colors. And I asked, just write down what's in your mind and put it into one of the color which is fitting. And then you go through that colors and you ask, what is your story about that? Why is that sentence, why is this explanation maybe read? And then people are open up and try and explain their feelings. So that would be a way. So more or less, you always have to open that room, that people are able to talk about that. And as I mentioned before, so I gave you just examples for a business view, and this is what I really would try to tell the people. We are now talking about business things because you're not a therapist as a leader, and that's not your job to open up to all fears, but you need to open up that room. You need to give that space, and then it will happen.
Thank you for all of your sharing, because as a leader, for me, it's very, very important and crucial, because we all know 2024 is still a big question. Yes. So I did apply on your sharing, and it's really linked to the answer of the previous question of the lady downstairs. We open up the space for everyone to share their concerns, their worries, and even their fears. But then I receive a pressure back, like, okay, I share with you my concerns, I share with you my worries, and I trust you as my leader. So can you solve my problem? Can you solve my worries?
Yes.
And I have to be honest to my teammates that, sorry, I don't have all the questions or all the answer right now with your questions. Let's try one by one, like you said, with the specific actions, and we will adapt along the journey. But still, you know, the pressure is still there. As the leader, you should answer because you should calm down the teammate.
Yes.
So what should I do in this situation?
I guess you should be honest. You just can't tell people, you can't tell people, I'm not secure what the future will bring. But what I bring you is we have a learning cycle, we are in a fast pace, and we are trying to invent, we are trying to find out things, we are trying to deal with our worries. Because what you can do is in that learning cycles is you can see when this is our worry, how do we answer? And then on a very certain way, you give security in the process. You can't give an answer which gives, which makes the people secure in future, but you can say, whatever it brings, we have an answer because we know and we are sure how to deal with it. We are going through learning cycles and we are answering directly your worries. And that's very helpful. I saw a lot of teams were more or less, which had more or less stopped their work, and then really development arise because they went through that learning cycles. There's one question more.
Thank you. Judith, one question, maybe starting with a little explanation from my side. I think that the word uncertainty is also very relevant in the context we are speaking.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the uncertainty is more a worry than a fear, I guess. But when I get into a new situation in business, and coincidentally, this is just happening to myself, you find new people and a new team, and you see that they have so many questions, and they think about the iteration in the next months, which are, I don't know, so far away, that brings complexity to their actual situation. So they don't know what's coming. So this uncertainty leads to a worry. So what's your recommendation to address this, to say, okay, first things first, second things later, or how would you deal with that? Because it's not really a fear, it's more like being worried of what the future will bring.
Actually, I'm not sure if it's not a fear. So this is something I would look at. Sometimes, having fear is always undirected and often very irrational. So I remember a team where I came in and we started those learning cycles, and they had the feeling of if they would try something and it would not happen, so then everyone would get fired in that team. And it took a while till we understood this as business partners. So there was a fear, and it was completely irrational. So first of all, I would play one of those games just to have an idea of, am I talking about a fear or a worry? And if people get very, very worried about the learning cycles they are going into, I just would look at how is their amount of work they have to do. And when people have too much on their workload, they are worried. And if they have too less on their workload, they are worried. And so actually you have to look at that. And if there are people who are more or less in overload of work, you just have to deal. Something like when we are doing this, we take out this out of the system, or we do here in automations. So you need to do the calculation. And it's trickier for those who have too less work, because it's not easy to tell that I don't have as much work as I should have. But therefore, you also need to open up a space. And what I saw several times is when people get into the right pace, so the workload fits, then you achieve much more than you did in having less or too much work. And so I would have a look at that. How's the workload and how can we change that? And be careful with people who say we have too much on the table. That's the normal answer. You really have to differ between too less and too much work. That's a leader task.
So a lot of this is really thought-provoking, so just please excuse me because it's a lot of layers. But when thinking about this idea of fears and worries and uncertainty, I think a lot of times what happens is there's so many worries, and then you start to have a sort of fear of the worries, and then you don't know what you don't know. And then it's like this vicious cycle. How do you get out of that and then start to break it apart and reason about it when you're dealing with this complex landscape at the same time?
So more or less, always is the answer, talk about it and then get it into action. So prioritize your worries, and then you say, for the first worry, we start a learning cycle. That's it. And then we see after 1, 2, or 3 months what happened, and then we decide for the next learning cycle, maybe that changes the other worries, but you need to get out of not talking about the worries, just feeling them. You need to put them on the table, and then you have to deal with it. And if something is really happening, then it will change the feelings of the people. So culture doesn't change from talking about, culture changes from different behavior. So I guess these were all questions and answers. So thank you so much. I wish you all my best to talk about fears and to overcome fears and be really, really creatively, because we need that in 2024. Oops.
Thank you so much, Judith. And it's an honor to have you on our stage. And I wish I could say this in Plattdeutsch, but thank you very much. And a little gift for you from NFQ. And once more, could you please put your hands together for Judith? You say in Thai,
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Watch the step.